Well, here we are. Here we are. I can't sort of do that cut without having a bit of a laugh, because it just does feel so random here today, I must admit. We're here in the most special place. We're here at the School of Art and Wellbeing in just south of Honiton, north of Beare on the South Devon coast. I don't think I need this on at the moment because we're I'm not close enough to anybody to warrant that. I hope you can see us. We've got 5 people watching. Wow, who's out there? Let's have a look and see who's out there. Let's get some comments up on the screen. We're having a hell of a time here. It's really complicated with the really hard with the mobile data. So if there's anybody there, I can see 4 people logged in. One's dropped off already. Maybe they're all just our testers checking it all out. What do you think of all this? Tell us and we'll pop it on the screen. How about that? So I don't know if I've got to type a message to start the feed going, but let's just pop a message up here. Anyone there? Is anyone there in interweb land? We're live streaming to the world until our mobile data runs out. Mr. Finch is in the house, isn't it? Let's just put Mr. Finch up on screen just to prove. So when you put a sensible message in like Mr. Finch has, you click on that, in theory, comes up on the screen and Mr. Finch says hello. And the cool thing is that Mr. Finch is actually over there. So if I press that button there and that button there, we should see Mr. Finch. We can't see Mr. Finch. Why is that? What's happened? Is it something to do with that? Let's have a look. There he is. Mr. Finch, turn your microphone on. Speak to the world. You're on the interweb.
Hello, world. It's lovely to be here at Art Camp. I've just popped down. I came down last night, drove down. I came to this beautiful place that I'd never heard of called the School of, School of Art and Wellbeing.
It is.
School of Art and Wellbeing. I don't know if those two always go together. I can think of a good few artists whose wellbeing suffered.
What's not to like about that, eh? What's not to like about that?
But hopefully here, there's less of the ear cutting. More of the fun. I'm here with Daryl. A lot of people on the Twitters will have been seeing Daryl's work over the last few weeks. Say hello, Daryl.
Hello, folks. How are we doing?
Yeah. So I don't know if people have been on the Twitters, they will have seen particularly his brilliant, like his paper plate makes and his cardboard makes, which got a lot of us through our key worker provisions. An awful lot of people going, what on earth am I going to teach today? I've got no idea how many kids will be in or who they'll be or what mental state they're going to be in. So for a lot of us, doing physical crafty things was a really lovely way of getting the children centered, and then you could get alongside and have a conversation while they were busily making their paper plate mazes or things. So I hadn't spotted you on Twitter before it all kicked off.
No, I was quite a low profile on there in terms of most of my time spent going into schools and museums, and all I would do is take some nice photos of the things that the kids had done and put them on at the end of the day, and the people that had been part of it would then look it up and or if we were doing, I used it quite often if we were doing something large scale that the people that started wouldn't see the end of.
Quite right.
So we put images on it so that they could see the final result of the work. But
so typically, you I mean, as well as the working classes where you're making afternoon makes, you've done some really big long-term projects in museums and things. So what's the biggest project you've done, do you think?
Wow, I mean, obviously some of them are big in terms of time because they're more complex. So, I mean, I did a set of bookshelves with books and artifacts on them for a place quite local to here in Bridport, and that probably took literally hundreds of hours. But in terms of size, probably the biggest thing is I remember a few years ago in a school building a totem pole. It was probably, once it was stacked and finished, it was probably maybe about 25 feet tall. So it was, but still all card and recycled materials.
Because so if people don't know your work, then the sort of the main takeaway, the bit that's really significant for people is that all of this is cardboard.
Well, so literally you can make something like this, and obviously you could, if you wanted to make it more long lasting and display it, you could paper mache it, you could paint it, you could even spray varnish it or something like that. But the nice thing about it is you've got the reverse of that, where if we made this just for today and children were helping us, if nobody wanted it at the end of the day, you could put it in the recycling, and every single part of it, including the tape, would be paper based. So,
So where did that come from? Is that is that an artistic decision, or is that a cost decision?
It's a cost decision initially, because the place that I started at, the budget for the art materials for the entire year, I'm going back a while, but it was only, I think, about something like about £1,000, maybe £1,200.
What can you do with that?
And obviously, you'd got children there all day, every day doing art. It wasn't like at school where they were doing, sort of a project every now and again. So I very quickly realised I was going to have to use simple materials that we could get our hands on easily. And then the skills came sort of after that. So obviously, when I first started, I made very many mistakes and sometimes had to take things apart and start from the beginning again. Whereas now, obviously, after years of doing it, I'm a little bit more experienced and can make the better decisions.
It's funny, isn't it? Because there's watching you work, which I've been doing for a couple of hours, maybe. What's the time? Have I? Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
You've got a lovely, quiet confidence, and it looks like it's right every time, which I'm not finding intimidating, but I am finding impressive.
Yeah, it's
because it's funny. It's unintimidating processes. There's nothing clever in terms of techniques.
No.
And the materials are materials that you've probably got in your house, or you could have in your house easily.
Absolutely, yeah.
So to that extent, it's very unintimidating, and we just go, oh yeah, look, he's making a cardboard castle. We probably did that when we were kids.
Yeah.
But there's the level of detail and confidence that goes into it. You think it's quite a special skill set. Anybody else got that skill set?
Well, there's plenty of people that do similar things. I think everybody over time, when you do something, you start to have your own little sort of skills that become yours that you sort of use a lot. So there's certain things that I do that may be slightly different from the way other people would approach it. But most of my techniques come from having to explain things right down to a 4-year-old. If you're really going to understand anything, whether it's playing a musical instrument or any kind of process, if you have to teach it to someone who's 4 or 5 years old, then you have to break it down into stages.
That's when you find out if you understand it or not as well, isn't it? An awful lot of teachers go into a lesson thinking they understand what they're going to teach, and it's not until somebody doesn't get it and they have to try and explain it in those simple terms that they realise
they understand it.
No, I didn't know why. I think it's a good lesson for us all, isn't it? Can you explain it to a 4-year-old? I mean, I was talking to my son when we were driving down about some elements of politics, particularly around gender. And how hard it is actually to explain without using fancy words, and then realizing that the fancy words are actually what you're saying when you use those fancy words is, well, I don't really understand this, but I'm going to say hegemony because I've learned that gets me out of trouble.
In terms of this, I find myself using, rather than even using maths words, if you like, so rather than using even things like cube or cone, I tend to use food. So I'll say like an ice cream cone, like a sausage, because even when you're 4,
you know what an ice cream cone
you know
looks
what
like.
an apple looks like, you know what banana looks like. So if you use that as your terminology, and then the kids can't find it quite funny because you say, I want you to make a banana and a sausage, and for some reason they all burst out laughing. So it's like, you use what kind of keeps them, it keeps them on board as well. It keeps them entertained, if you like, as you're going along. But because
it is that banter. We've had a little bit of it as we've been going on today, isn't it? It's that at the end of the day, we've got a pile of cardboard here.
Yeah. You've got to make it exciting. I mean, it's that's one of the things is you need a bit of speed in something like this as well. So like the things that we were making earlier, like the little castles that we've been making earlier, you can make the base of something like that in the space of only maybe 5 minutes, and you can show them, and they then know that they can do it, and it's not unachievable.
I used to challenge myself. I say, if I can do it in 5 minutes with one hand, then I reckon my class can do it in an hour with both hands. And I used to test drive all my makes with that. It's got to take me less than 5 minutes because these kids are going to take a while. Not because they're chatting and being naughty, because they've not done it before and they've got to think about this stuff.
It was interesting with lockdown because when I decided to do the art jumpstart projects that I put on there for children to do at home, I've got a garage full of art materials. So I had got literally any art material that you could wish for. I'd got my hands on, but I knew that people hadn't got that at home. So I was making stuff and forcing myself to use just what I'd got available that I knew other people would have in their recycling. Where I could have literally walked to my garage, got something that was perfect for the job and used it. But I knew that other people hadn't got that option. But that, I really enjoyed that. It sounds like it would be really frustrating, but it was almost the opposite. It made me think in a different way that maybe I haven't done for a long time.
because we do this in poetry. We give ourselves constraints. So I'm going to make this rhyme every second line, or I'm going to have, and it's those constraints that free you up to be creative. Actually, isn't it? It's about.
And sometimes when you put boundaries, I often say to people that if you were doing something like if you're doing a collage with young children, really young children, and if you put something, if you just give them a piece of paper and you put 40 things on the table and ask them to make a collage, all they will learn is that glue sticks two things together. Because they'll just grab a handful of whatever materials, they'll put glue on the paper, they'll stick them on, which is great fun. It can teach you a lot. If you limit the material so all you give them is a piece of cardboard and a piece of paper, then they have to rip it, cut it, scrunch it up, score it, stack it on top of each other, wrap it up with tape. So they have to start understanding the processes that you can use with that material. So if you do something like that, it then makes sense when you switch to doing a proper piece of artwork. They've got those skills already there to use. Yeah.
It also looks more satisfying because of the limited palette, so because children don't get the limited palette, so I give them two colours and they make something look beautiful.
Definitely.
If they've all got the same two colours, then that just there's no shame in that, because you say, well, we put it all together, doesn't this look amazing? Let's talk about how it looks amazing, let's talk about why it looks amazing. And part of that is learning limited palette rather than splashing everything you got
colour.
on.
It's a similar thing. If you're using every single colour, a lot of the projects that I did over the summer, if people look back at the final photographs of them, I quite often put a wash of a colour over something like a painter would do on a canvas, so that it makes me see it slightly differently before I put the rest of the colours on. And you get this kind of overall feel to something. And
you see the relief more than the contrast of colour.
Yes. So the same on this. At the moment, the tape is acting a little bit like camouflage, so it's making you not able to see the 3D as it would be. If we put a wash of a colour over this now, or even like dry brushed it where bits of the surface stood out, even if it was only grey or only blue, your brain would see every single little three-dimensional shape. And that's a really kind of interesting thing to do with 3D things.
Dry brushing is a great technique just for bringing magic into anything, isn't it?
Yeah. Either that or sponges as well. Little kids use sponge painting a lot, but like careful sponge painting on something like this would really lift that. You'd have almost like an old worn style texture. So it's something that would be a real go-to thing on this with me. I would wash it with a colour, maybe obviously do a different coloured sky to lift it, but I would definitely be using some kind of mark making techniques on it, even where you kind of sponge and then before it's dry you scratch back into
the you back do a sgraffito, don't you?
So you've got little cracks in stones and things.
In those works that you were doing and posting right through lockdown, you often created texture in the background for no reason other than to create texture in the background, didn't you? You were often splitting the card and just gluing it down and creating a background which then really held the light in a different way to the foreground. And like you go, well, that's a cheap effect because I'm not, you're
using up what you've already got. I mean, it
saves me putting it in a bin. I can just stick it to this bit of.
I mean, if it was doing the same on here, it'd be a similar process. You take some, take some of your leftover pieces, you just tear them up, and then what you try and do is glue them so that they went over the bits of masking tape, but not over the bits that you wanted to show. And then that does three things. It makes it stronger, it hides the masking tape, and then at the same time it gives you this texture on the surface. So I like it when you're doing a process that does two things at once. So paper mache is a great example of that. You paper mache over this with some thin paper, it makes it stronger, it gives it a texture, and you can change the colour. So you're doing more than one thing at once, which I think for children just seems even more exciting because something doesn't take as long as they might imagine it would.
It's also a typical working day in pre-lockdown. I mean, you work all over the country, don't you? So are you normally staying in a place for a week? And
it can be, it varies massively. So obviously to cut down on chasing around the country, I sometimes try and bunch things together that aren't too far from each other. But typically it would be, if it's within, say, 120 miles, it would be me getting up very early, jumping in the car with a load of equipment, arriving at a school, and then going into a class, working with the teacher and the TA on a particular theme. But it could be, going into a museum for an afternoon, making something big that people can just come and do a little bit of. So even a little 3-year-old can just stick a few bits of paper on.
Be
So
part of that.
could be
thing,
really,
yeah.
and then again, you can get things like you can be training teachers. So one day you can be sitting there training people who are the same age and the same experience as you. And then the next day you can be sitting on the floor in a reception class making a tiny little puppet that's the simplest thing you could imagine. So it's very diverse.
It's a very lovely, varied way of life.
Yeah.
How did you get into it then? So am I right? You trained as an illustrator?
Yeah, I trained as an illustrator, and then just through sheer luck, I ended up working at a residential arts centre where children went out to do projects.
Yeah.
And I tried for quite some months to do 2-dimensional drawing and painting projects with the children that came out, but because some of them were quite young, they couldn't hold their attention on a long period of time. So I started to think about what I'd been excited by when I was their age, and a lot of it was getting junk and making a model out of it, like we all did.
Yes.
And so I started to explore that, and through exploring it, I started to get more confident, and to the point where you've got to that point when people start to refer to you as the cardboard man or the paper mache
Cardboard
man.
king, mate, not just cardboard man.
Yeah, someone put that cardboard king, which I thought was hilarious. Yeah. So you get known for a particular style of work, and that's how it started. And so when I went self-employed, luckily for me, I'd done about 13 years of work in this institution, so I've got quite a wide circle of people who knew what the skills were that I was doing. So it wasn't like starting something completely from scratch, which I would imagine is a lot.
So you had a lot of contacts, and you were already people who probably wanted those skills. So I think a lot of people probably looking at your work and thinking that looks like a pretty nice life you made for yourself. You know?
I mean, it is, but
it comes a lot of graft came before it.
I think also, I've had this conversation with a lady earlier today. Is the bit that people see and love is the really exciting, amazing part of it. But for every hour that you see someone, this is the same for anyone who's self-employed. For every hour that you see someone doing the exciting part, there's a part that isn't as exciting. So there's the finance involved with running your own business. There's answering emails. There's keeping up with social media. There's ordering materials. There's testing things out, printing stuff off, researching things, which I enjoy because it's a job that I love. But it's necessary for you to do the bit that people see you doing, and even traveling. I do. Literally thousands of miles a year of just sitting in the car, so you there is a downside to that as well.
A lot of the children's authors that I'm in contact with, so they don't have time to do any writing. This is the problem. I earn my living by driving up and down the motorway, giving talks to children, doing creative writing stuff. I like that. That's fine. But the whole point of this was that I was going to be a writer, and I'm stealing the time.
Maybe though, what's happening in lockdown might change that because there's been so much more live stream things, and I can see a future definitely in terms of training with teachers where I could easily be around my table at home with all my stuff, and you wouldn't get maybe 100% the same,
but you don't need to drive to Hull.
Exactly. So it's like a second best at the moment until they're able to do the virtual reality thing and you're actually in the room.
There's a cost benefit thing. So I think about my brother's life. He drives around the country training and providing services around pensions. And it has always been a big part of his job that he's there in the room, So it's an awful lot of driving. And you go, what's the? Obviously, there is a benefit because there's the real guy really in the room, and he's here with us, and the presence is important. But what's the cost? The cost to have him on the road, sleeping in the Premier Inn with a company car. Cost is huge.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing. I mean, I think the thing you would lose is the spontaneity. So if I was just showing people how to do one process, it would be easy. But what invariably happens if you're with a group of teachers is you've got teachers who are teaching reception up to year 6, say. When they're involved in the task you've asked them to do, they'll invariably go, well, what would we do if we were doing this? Or they'll say, the children I teach are much younger. How would you adapt this? And that allows me to go off task with that particular person and help them with something that might be beneficial. I think that would be harder if you weren't facing
that. Would be very hard.
That's the only bit I can see that would be to the detriment of that, really.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise you might as well, make a set of videos, building with Daryl, and this is how you do this project, and this is how you do this project, and here's some ways that you could make that technique available in other things. But
I like the adaptability. I mean, even the things that I did over lockdown, the first set of them was quite prescriptive. But if you'd got a child who was a little bit more experienced or a little bit older, you could have easily made them more complex.
So I'm interested to see if these teachers who've done lots of your lockdown makes, have they now got a battery of techniques that they can use, and they can go, oh, I know what my theme is. Next, come September, we're doing, the girl that stole an elephant. I'm going to make that girl on the elephant, and I know how to do that because Daryl's given me some techniques and some confidence.
I think you're always going to get two types of people. It's the same whenever you do any type of training work or you're the recipient of training work. You're either going to get someone who takes those skills and runs with them, or you're going to get someone that sees that as just how you make that particular thing. And I think that's the same with any training. Some people will be confident enough to adapt it, and some people won't.
I guess we're happy with both, aren't we? We're happy with people who now can make a castle. This one is a cheat. This one is Daryl's example that he was looking for. So, but here's genuine child work here. This one, isn't it? This is all genuine child, or maybe child of the parent.
Yeah.
So these guys came along this morning and they've made these beautiful cardboard castles, which they are very, very proud of, very, very pleased with. If it's reconnected people to the joy of cutting and sticking,
absolutely,
then it's not time wasted, is it?
No, not at all.
That was my favourite thing when I was a kid. For my birthdays, I'd get a roll of sellotape or a little craft knife or something. That was all my Christmases come together. This is beautiful. See, that's got a very Chinese style roof on it. It's an unusual. Could be like a samurai castle.
Yeah, definitely.
This one is more freeform. It's sort of like cartoon fairy castle. Maybe.
Absolutely. Looks good.
It's good, and it's nice that you embrace those mistakes and you look at it. You go, well, that one looks okay, and you can. Well, it's been marvellous talking to you. I believe that my friend wants to move on to another topic, so he can take us off. But we'll carry on making this. Yeah, we're kind of not too far off on this one now.
Another kind of 15 minutes. Do a bit on the other side of the turret on that one, and then that's ready to go. Then.
That's amazing, isn't it? Well, thank you very much. Passing back to my friend.
So,
Nick.
Ed Finch, stay there. Ed Finch, pop the castles down.
Yes,
and let's get me on here. So here we are. So we're here in fact, Ed Finch, do you fancy being camera? Ed's just dropped in on the way through, but we're not letting him go in a hurry. Do you fancy going on that camera there?
Yes.
And undo the power. So undo that tie wrap that's holding the power there, and just unplug the USB from it for a moment. So Ed's going to be our cameraman, and we want to show you what's going on the site here. So we're in the most super spot. So you can take the tripod with you, leave that on the tripod, just disconnect it so that you can go walking. So take the power, undo the power adapter. Right, you're good to go now. You're good to go, mate. With that, that's nice and flexible. Pan it round and show the campsite. Show everybody the campsite we've got here. Let's get that. So there we go. That's the wrong one. Let's get that one. There we go. There's our campsite. Got a wigwam. Got some playing football, some art of football skills going on there. They'll be printing T-shirts in a minute. And Ed, do you want to just come behind me here and show everybody the field at the front? So basically, I'm on the deck here. Ed's going for a wander. You've died. What, power died already? Wow. Okay. That's not charging at all. Okay, so we can take the battery off this one. Hold on a second, everybody. Tell you what we'll do. We'll cut to a little video, just so everybody can have a little bit of video action while we're doing this. Make it look like we're a little bit maybe a little bit professional.
Well, this mic turned off as well.
It's always about one thing. Connection. We are leaving the industrial economy and entering the connection economy. You don't have to like it, but it's true. Art is what we call it when someone does something that might connect us to someone else. And either you're in or you're out. Either you want to play this game or you don't. Art doesn't work because we did something conventional and predictable, and here it is industrialized, right? Art works because we connected. I hope you'll think about it as you consider whether you want to get off the plane, whether you're willing to lead, whether you care enough to make art, whether you're willing to connect. And it's this: are you going to matter? I hope you will. Thanks for your attention.
So we're having all sorts of fun and games today because we don't seem to be able to get much power to our cameras. We don't seem to have much luck with our cameras and our power to the cameras. So I'm going to go back to number 1. Why is that not up? Because that's on. Here we go. So we've just had the Art of Castles, building castles in the air. That's one of the themes today. We've got Franca west away from Cornwall. She's going to be coming and doing some black and white art. We're building the art trail. What I'm going to do is actually cut the transmission now, and we will go back to go and get some power. We'll go and get some power at the front, and then we'll come back to you and show you what's going on there. But basically, this is the art trail that we've got. We've got this amazing art trail. And I definitely need to reboot now because my laptop has just died completely. So this is the art trail. This is the site that we've got here. That's the site that we've got here. And I'm just going to press a few buttons here and get myself up on top of that like that. Does that work? Let's have a look. There we go. No, it's not worked. Why hasn't that worked? Does that need tuning, need adjusting out or something? That's because I haven't got a green screen. That's why that's not working. So this is the course. This is the course that we're working to. So basically, this is our site, a lovely, lovely site. We've got 2 halves to it. We've got an art trail on one side, which goes through a beautiful meadow, and that's what that looks like. So we've got art installations there, and that's what's behind me in the field that you can see me behind me here. So that's what's going on in the field there. And we'll have a look at that. I'll get some power. We'll get the camera around the front, and we'll show you what's going on out there. We'll do a little live broadcast around there. Our camera batteries don't seem to be charging. And then the other half, it brings everybody through the other half of the site. So that's the big art trail in the meadow. And then this bit is around the back. And it goes through a polytunnel. We've got the campsite here. And we've got a lovely little forest trail. And we've got a beautiful, beautiful illuminated part for tonight. We're doing a night trail with illuminations tonight. So it's going to be absolutely lovely. So I'm going to cut the transmission now and just cut to a little clip, and then we'll come back afterwards and we'll show you what we're up to at the front. So thank you.